Good morning, everyone. My name is Kylie Simdorn, and I'm a senior economics major and education minor. For my senior research paper, I decided to look at reproductive policies and female labor force participation. In this study, a time series analysis has been conducted over the years 1960 to 2017 to examine the effects of the Pregnancy Discrimination Act and Roe v. Wade on the US female labor force participation rate. The explanatory variables include real median annual female earnings, educational attainment of women, and the nation's unemployment rate. The effects of the Discrimination Act and Roe v. Wade are captured using dummy time variables, controlling for the fundamental economic drivers of the female labor force participation rate. The results suggest that the implementation of the Anti-Discrimination Act positively impacted the behavior of working women in the United States. So here we have a list of the explanatory variables that I just mentioned and our theoretical model. So we have real median annual female earnings, which is in dollars, and it is denoted as FE. So I will refer to it as that for the rest of the presentation. We also have the US unemployment rate, which is a percentage, and it's denoted as UN. We also have a percent of female working age population with 4 years of college or more. So that is also a percent and is denoted as SPBA. We have the Pregnancy Discrimination Act denoted as PDA and the Roe versus Wade denoted as Roe. The theoretical equation at the bottom shows the variables with the hypothesized relationship to female labor force participation, which I will talk to you about in the next slide. So here we have our data and the source of the data as well. So we have FE, which measures the real median annual earnings of females. The earnings are in 2017 CPI adjusted dollars. The mean values are 34,747, which means the average annual earnings of women during this period is 37,747 per year. The source is the US Department of Labor Women's Bureau. We have SPBA, which is a ratio of the number of females over the age of 25 with 4 years or more of college to the working age population, which is ages 25 to 54 of females for the United States. The mean for this one is 7.337, which means the average share of females with a bachelor's degree during this time period is 7%. The source of this data is the United States Census Bureau and the Federal Reserve Economic Data website. We have UN, which measures the US unemployment rate. The mean is 6.1215, which means the average unemployment rate from 1960 to 2017 was about 6%. This data is from the Federal Reserve Economic Data website as well. We also have the PDA, dummy time variable to examine the effects of the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978. The mean is 0.6896, which means 68% of observations are after the PDA policy implementation. And just as a side note, for this dummy time variable, it equals 1 if after the policy implementation and 0 otherwise. Finally, we have Roe, which is a dummy time variable to examine the effects of the 1973 US Supreme Court case decision as a result of Roe v. Wade. The mean for this is 0.7758, which means 77% of observations are after the Roe policy implementation. And similarly to the PDA, it equals 1 if after the policy implementation or 0 otherwise. Next, we have the hypotheses and theoretical reasoning. With UN, it is hypothesized that it will have a negative relationship with female labor force participation. The reason for this is if the unemployment rate is high, it may be a sign that the economy is not doing well, which would in turn discourage women from entering the labor force, decreasing the female labor force participation rate. Next, we have FE, female earnings, which is hypothesized to have a positive relationship with female labor force participation. just because the higher the median annual earnings for women, the more likely a woman will be to seek employment, which would increase the female labor force participation rate. Next, we have SPBA, which is hypothesized to have a positive relationship with female labor force participation. This is because if women are pursuing a higher education, they are likely to enter the labor market upon completion. So if the share of females with a bachelor's degree or higher increases, the female labor force participation rate will increase as well. Next, we have Rho, which is hypothesized to have a positive relationship with female labor force participation rate as well. This is because when women have more control over when they have children, they will be more likely to enter the labor force, which would increase the female labor force participation rate. And similarly with the PDA, Pregnancy Discrimination Act, that is hypothesized to have a positive relationship with female labor force participation as well. If a woman knows there's guaranteed job security for when they do make the decision to start a family, women will be more likely to enter the labor force, which increases the female labor force participation rate. Here we have a table of the results of the regressions that were run. You can tell there are two different versions of the model. The first version includes all of those variables that I just mentioned. And the second version includes only the variables that were statistically significant. So considering the adjusted R-squared is about the same for both versions, and which means that in version 2, even without the unemployment rate and the dummy variable for Rho, we're still explaining the same amount of variation in the dependent variable. So that is why version 2 is the preferred version. This regression was estimated with Newey West, and the t statistics are shown in parentheses. 1 star indicates that it was significant at the 10% level, 2 stars indicate significance at the 5% level, and 3 stars indicate significance at the 1% level. So the conclusion for this research project was that the results suggest that the Discrimination Act had a positive effect on the female labor force participation rate. It can be interpreted as such. Over the years during which PDA was in effect, the female labor force participation rate was 6.1% higher than years it was not in effect. Version 1 of the regression shows the coefficient for Rho is statistically insignificant. So although Rho doesn't exert an influence on female labor force participation, there is evidence that PDA does have an effect. It is possible that the Pregnancy Discrimination Act variable may be capturing some of the effects of the Roe versus Wade just due to the time period overlap. Thank you so much.